So I understand that Roman Peterson, who you met earlier this evening, Roman, are you still here? I gather that Roman, one of the Letters About Literature awardees, was excited not just about the honor that he received, but the fact that one of his favorite writers was being recognized. And that writer is James Patterson. James Patterson's works have thrilled readers of all ages since he first published in 1976, and this reader is among those. Patterson is also a great hero to thousands of school librarians and independent booksellers across the country for his generosity and his advocacy. And here to induct James Patterson is Michael Pietsch, Chief Executive Officer, Hachette Book Group.
Thank you, Will. It is a great, great honor to be able to be the person who gets to induct into the New York State Writers Hall of Fame the men you've all heard of, the mighty, mighty writer, James Patterson. I've had the pleasure of working with Jim as his editor and his publisher for nearly 20 years now. Can you believe that? Yeah. And I've gotten to know some things about him working on book after book that are not necessarily the things that you know about him. You know he's the best-selling novelist in the world. And you know that you've seen his face perhaps in an ad or two. And he seems like this a man who was having a really good time doing what he's doing. That part is true. You probably don't know that he's also one of the most generous writers in the world. As Will mentioned, he's given tens of millions of dollars to school librarians, to independent booksellers, to scholarships for teachers, and to programs devoted to getting kids reading. He is a man with a burning, burning mission: to make reading fun for every child in America, because giving kids books that they actually enjoy is the most important step to their loving reading, and their loving reading is the most important step in their future and in our nation's future. Another thing you probably know a little bit about because you're here in this room is that James Patterson is a man with a New York state of mind. He was born and raised in Newburgh, went to college in the Bronx, and had a long career in the most New York of businesses, advertising, finishing as global chairman of J. Walter Thompson, before he was finally able to quit his day job and devote himself entirely to his great love, writing. James Patterson has set more novels in New York than probably most any other writer has ever written. He has set 65 novels for adults and children in New York State. Now, imagine that. This isn't about volume. This is about every one of these books is a book with deep meaning, with great drama, with characters who are going through the greatest challenges life has. And Jim has set those stories, not just in Manhattan, but in all 5 boroughs, including Staten Island. Also along the glamorous stretches of East Hampton, in his hometown of Newburgh, and I just learned at the dinner table, also in Marlborough, nearby Newburgh, and in the Hudson River towns of Briarcliff Manor, Irvington, and glamorous Ossining, where I lived for 20 years. This is a man who loves New York, who is stimulated by its energy and its creativity, and writes it again and again and again. You might think that in doing this, he is actually kind of the reverse Rip Van Winkle, and he actually hasn't slept in the past 20 years. But the fact is that Jim always seems really well rested when I see him. And in addition to writing these books, he manages to read more books than anyone I know, to see every movie that I wish I could see, to spend a huge amount of time with his wife Sue and his son Jack, and to be clearly having just the time of his life doing all this. And he does it out of the greatest motivation of all. He does it out of joy. And that is the ultimate New York cool, to do all these amazing things, all these important things, and never show a sweat. So please welcome a man who is a great writer, a great teller of stories, and who's also as cool as a Union Square Farmers Market cucumber, James Patterson.
Hi, I'm Stephen King. You know, it's such a crazy time, it's such a terrifying time that I really do think it's really useful to laugh sometimes. I know there's been a lot of serious talk today, and it's appropriate, but I think we're going to go crazy if we don't laugh. It's just so nutty. And in terms of laughter, I have to ask, are there any IRS or New York State tax agents in the room? Seriously, raise your hand. I need to know, because I am accepting this award in New York State, but I am a resident of Florida. I keep all the receipts. I have restaurant receipts and movie receipts and whatever. I live in Palm Beach right now, city of used-to-bes, I call it. Used to be chairman of, used to be CEO of, used to be the spouse of, whatever. I was born in Newburgh and raised in Newburgh, and Newburgh is about 60 miles away on the map, but it really is thousands and thousands of miles away from where we are tonight in terms of getting out of there. And I don't mean to demean the city, but it's currently ranked the 6th most violent small town in America, and it was always a tough place. I did dream. When I was a kid, I did dream of being in the Hall of Fame, Cooperstown. That didn't work out. Couldn't hit a curve, couldn't hit a real good fastball either. During my life and growing up in Newburgh, I have been poor. My father actually grew up in a Newburgh poorhouse. I have been middle class. Then I was poor again, then I was middle class again. And now I'm rich. And on balance, I find that rich is better. But I must say I'm really happy that I passed through all the rest of it, because I think it made me the person that I am. I think it's one of the reasons that I try to give back as much as I can. And I think it's why I'm the writer that I am, and in particular why I write so many kids' books, and how important it is to get kids reading. And when I talk to groups of librarians or teachers, I will always say I'm here to save lives, and that's really what it is about. And I'll at some point I'll talk about a friend of mine who just retired as a school teacher, and he taught in Bosse's up in Westchester, he taught kids who were bright but could not stand being in school. And I told him that I'd met these Aunt Nellie brothers. And he said, "Oh my God, I hated those goddamn kids, And I said, "No, well, this is interesting, because they told me that you saved their lives, and they're now both teachers." And I will talk to teachers and librarians about, you hear from the brown nosers, but you don't hear from a lot of these kids who you're really turning around and saving. In Florida right now, absolutely the most exciting thing that we're trying to do, the percentage of kids reading at grade level in Florida right now is 43%. Yeah, the best in the country is Massachusetts at 62%. New York is in the 50s. It's not good. University of Florida has been working on a program for 5 years. They have it up into the mid-80s. They've figured out a lot of things, especially about teachers. And we went to the legislature last year. They've given us 10 districts. We'll get results in June. Met with the governor this past year, and he said if it works, we're going to take it across the state. And that will save. I just hope to God it works, because it's just such an exciting thing. I don't work for a living, as Michael was suggesting. I play for a living. I love to write in Florida. Years ago, I came across something that Flaubert wrote. We're buddies, Flaubert and I, in Paris. And it captures the way I feel when I sit down to write. And I do write every day, and I write 365 days a year. And what Flaubert wrote is, he said, "It is a delicious thing to write, to be no longer yourself, but to move in an entire universe of your own creating. Today, for instance, as man and woman, both lover and mistress, I rode in a forest on an autumn afternoon under the yellow leaves, and I was also the horses, the wind, the words my people uttered, even the red sun that almost made them close their love-drowned eyes. And that's what it's like to write. And I think all the writers who are being honored here would agree. It is just a glorious way to live or to make a living in Florida. Thank you so much for this. I'm honored and touched.
Just one more time. Thank you so much for being here. We're really grateful.
So it was certainly a great pleasure to serve as your MC for the ceremonies this evening. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining us and to mention this is the largest number of people attending in the Hall of Fame's 10 years of existence. It's truly wonderful to be amongst so many people who share a belief in the importance of writers and the written word. And I hope when the program's over, which will be shortly after Rocco comes back up, that you'll introduce yourselves to one another, and that maybe you'll even ask each other the single greatest question you can ever ask anyone: what are you reading? Now I'd like to bring Rocco up to close the program.
Well, I just want to thank Will for being such a great MC. Yes, thank you. And for all of you for joining us and for our inductees, some of whom will stay to autograph books. There are so many books in your bag. So until next year, what are you reading? Yes. Thank you.